Hey stoners, welcome back to the kitchen. Tonight we're making a super easy recipe for butter mints. Just a couple of ingredients. We've got 4 cups of powdered sugar. We've got 1 stick of infused butter. We've got some peppermint oil, some vanilla. In this case, we're using our homemade vanilla. We've got some heavy whipping cream. You could use regular milk if you didn't happen to have any of this on hand. And we've got some food coloring because we're gonna make these green just to make it clear that they are an infused edible. We like to make sure everything in our kitchen is really clear. So we're gonna start first with our butter. We're just gonna mix this up just a little bit by itself first, just to make sure it is nice and soft, although it has been sitting out for a bit, but we're just gonna give it a quick mix by itself.
A little aeration into it.
Yep, make sure we get all of that goodness in there. And the lightning color. Next we're gonna add our powdered sugar. And I'm gonna do this about half first so that we don't make a big mess in our kitchen and that it mixes in well. This is just gonna get a better texture for us in the end. We're gonna go slow, of course, in the beginning so that we don't get that big puff. And then we'll pick up our speed a little. Make sure we get it mixed in pretty good.
See, it's coming together.
We're getting a little crumb there. Okay, now I'm gonna put the other portion in, and this is a dry mixture, keep in mind, until we add the cream there towards the end.
So it's not necessarily going to make a dough.
Correct, not quite at this point. It is going to be pretty dry and crumbly. Trying not to make a mess on my board. I think I got it.
And just a hint, when you're mixing dry ingredients, to start out at low and then increase the speed.
Yep.
Don't do like this Key Fairy did, was she started it at 5 and ended up with like a half a cup of flour all over her and everything.
And actually I'm gonna scrape down a little bit here as well to make sure that we don't have any butter stuck to our sides. Make sure we don't have any bits down there in the bottom. You know, this mixer in particular is known for having that little, you know, indentation at the bottom. Stuff gets stuck down there, so we wanna make sure.
Now, about how long do you mix for, or you just go by texture?
I just kind of go by eye texture till it kind of looks like it's all kind of mixed in there. And then it'll really start to come together when we add the couple liquids that we're gonna add here. And it's not a ton of liquid, but it's really gonna change what's going on here because that, you know, that powdered sugar really melts pretty quickly.
So can I just show this? This looks like,
yeah,
kind of like, almost like breadcrumb or cornmeal with the flour mixture. A really light crumb mix.
So the butter's kind of well dispersed into the sugar, and that's a really good, you know, comparison, like when you're making a dough, a bread dough, and you're mixing that butter in. So now we're gonna do a half a teaspoon of peppermint. And peppermint is really a really strong extract. So even though these are butter mints, we're doing a half a teaspoon of the peppermint. We're actually gonna do more vanilla than that. We're gonna do a whole teaspoon of vanilla. And it's gonna help kind of balance out the flavor.
Now this recipe is good for somebody who does not like the taste of infused butter or oils or anything, because the mint and the vanilla kind of mask that weed flavor.
Correct. And then as I mentioned earlier, we were gonna do green. So we're gonna do about 3 or 4 drops of food coloring initially to kind of see what color we get, because we want it to be kind of a minty, kind of a light green. And we'll give that kind of a mix in. And as we get that going, we're gonna mix in a couple tablespoons of heavy cream.
Now, do you want cold cream, room temperature? It doesn't matter.
I don't know that it matters. I typically just pull it right out of the fridge. So I go cold. And from here, I typically let this go a couple of minutes. Make sure that color gets mixed in really well. And then kind of see what the texture looks like. And then judge from there if I need to add a bit more heavy cream. Because at this point, you'll see that it starts to get to sort of more of a cookie dough texture that you're used to. And you want to be able to get it to that point where it's a dough where when you squeeze it together that it sort of sticks together on its own. Because eventually we're going to roll this into a log type thing.
Okay.
I think this needs a little bit more moisture to kind of get this going, so I'm gonna add a little bit.
Now add a little bit at a time.
Add a little bit at a time as we go, and then give it a little bit more time to kind of mix. And I've got more sugar kind of off to the side. Again, if I were to go too much with the liquid, I could always add a touch more sugar to kind of balance it back out.
Okay.
If I thought it was getting too liquidy.
Little's better than a lot because you can't take it away, kind of.
Exactly. So, yep, you're going to go just a little bit at a time. So, again, I'm going to just kind of scrape down, make sure we're getting everything mixed in, because you see we got a little bit of streaky color here. I want to make sure that that all gets, mixed in as much as possible. But we're also going to give it a little test. See, I think the consistency of this,
Gotcha.
maybe a little tiny bit more, but we're getting there. See how it's staying together
Gotcha.
pretty well. But I think
Not cracking.
Yep, I think it just needs just a little tiny bit more moisture, and then a little bit more mixing just to kind of get that color dispersed as much as we can. So we're gonna go just a tiny little bit more cream, and just another minute or two.
Now, important to note, since we're adding cream, do these need to be refrigerated?
So they have a shelf life of about 2 weeks unrefrigerated.
Okay.
Typically they don't last longer than that in my house.
Right.
But if you're gonna keep them longer, yes, I would suggest refrigerating.
Okay.
I prefer them unrefrigerated because they dry out a bit on the outside.
And a little hard.
And I prefer that texture.
Okay.
So I like them that way, and like I said, they typically go pretty quick because they're pretty tasty little morsels. So
kind of like a texture like a store-bought buttermint where it's got
Yep.
that harder.
Yep, on the outside. So I think we're getting there. I think we're pretty good.
Yep.
That looks a little bit more even in color, a little bit more kind of dough-like, traditional dough-like. All right, so we're gonna clean up here a little bit, and then we're gonna dump this out and try to roll it out.
All right, we're gonna get a break while we clean it up.
All right. So we've gotten cleaned up a little bit. So now we're gonna just dump our dough out and roll it into some logs. So typically what I do is just start kind of gathering it up, sort of Play-Doh texture, into sort of snake-like shapes. I can never quite get it to really roll for me, so I kind of just end up forming it in my hand.
I was gonna say it's more like squan than it is Play-Doh, isn't it?
You know, so I end up kind of doing that, you know.
Do you think it's something you could press into silicone mold and pop out?
You know, it's pretty soft, so I'm not sure it would release very well. We could certainly give it a try, though. So, I mean, it does roll a little bit once you kind of get your...
The log form?
Yeah, but because you want it to, like I said, because you want it to kind of dry out, you don't want to put too much moisture in it. I suppose if you put more milk or more cream in it, you could get it to a state where it might roll a bit better. But anywho, so what I ended up doing is that, right, I kind of make a bunch of these sort of things.
Logs.
Kind of snakes or logs, try to get them about, they kind of just fall apart on me. And that's okay, because I want them about 1/2 inch, 3/4 inch or so.
In diameter?
In diameter, yep. And then once you've done that with all of your dough, you're gonna take all of these and then cut them across into individual pieces about the same size as the diameter that you rolled them, so that you end up with sort of a square or cube sort of serving. Then what you'll do is you'll take these and you'll leave them sort of spaced out and let them dry for at least a couple of hours. I prefer to leave mine overnight.
Okay.
As long as you're comfortable with leaving them out in your kitchen or
So you
somewhere
just like on a
that.
cookie sheet or parchment paper?
Yep, I just kind of leave them out like this on a piece of parchment, let them dry, and then I store them in just a Tupperware or, you know, Ziploc type, you know, container. Like I said, at room temperature for up to a couple of weeks.
And stoners, let me tell you, that is a beautiful way to discreetly dose. Okay, so we got to just add a little bit to our video.
Maybe
is
a little.
That we have found that body heat actually makes them roll out easier.
Right, give it a little kneading, a little body heat, and then makes it a bit more pliable because the butter, there's a significant amount of butter in here. It warms up a bit, and then it makes the dough a bit more pliable and a little bit more rollable.
So, stoner tip 1. Smells like peppermint and weed.
Not a bad smell.